It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday, only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
That's right. It is time for Fridays with AI. We got a good one today. And as you know, every Friday we like to spend with AI, ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. And today, in honor of the Phillies going out to Sacramento to play the Athletics, we all know that the Athletics were in Philly from 1901 to 1954. Financial reasons, family issues among the Mack family, Connie Mack just getting old and more miserable than what he was in his younger days, declining performance of the teams, and the growing popularity of the Phillies all kind of led to the A's moving to Kansas City. The AL, the American League, did not want the A's in Philly. They did not think it was viable because of the Phillies. But there was a large group, and there still is today, that support the Athletics in Philly and wish they had never left. My friend John Foley always talks about bringing the A's back to Philly. But ultimately, there was an investment group of local Philadelphia businessmen who wanted to buy the A's. A deal was in place, and then the American League put some pressure on some people, and I forget the guy's name, but he was the owner of Yankee Stadium, swooped in, made a bigger offer than what the Philly group was, forcing basically the Macks to have no other choice. And that's where some of the issues came, because Connie Mack still wanted to keep them in Philly, but his sons were like, look at this money. Ultimately, they were sold and then moved to Kansas City. But I wonder, and I asked AI this, what if the Athletics had stayed in Philly? What if one of those groups did buy, the local Philly groups did buy the A's and kind of partnered with the Mack family? Well, AI said the first thing they would have done is renovate Connie Mack Stadium. That was one of the biggest things, even in the 50s. It needed to be updated. It was an older stadium. So they took some of that money, reinvested in the team. They reinvested in Connie Mack Stadium and tried to bring the A's back to where their prominence was in the 20s and the teens, I guess you would call them. So from 1955 to 1970, this would be considered the golden rebirth of this storied American League franchise. Philly would remain a two-team town, but through a push toward player development, looking at local talent, scouting, and just really kind of the precursor to what we see today with analytics and things like that, the A's kind of rise back to prominence and become the number one team in Philly. Due to the way they were winning and kind of building the team. They were gritty, smart, like a working class blue collar type team. It was the perfect fit for Philly. And because of the kind of the decline then in the 50s of the Phillies, the A's coming back to prominence, the A's were by far the number one baseball team in Philly. Through the 1960s, they would win 4 American League pennants, 1962, 64, 65, and 69. Winning the World Series in both 64 and 65. They go back-to-back. Even though they put money into Connie Mack Stadium, it obviously was just a very, very old stadium. So the Vet still opens up in 1971. The A's still share it with the Eagles, but they make it more baseball friendly. It's still the multi-purpose stadium, but the vision that AI had was it was more like kind of like the Oakland Coliseum or Jack Murphy Stadium. If you remember watching like the 4 o'clock AFC West games on TV when we were kids, you know how you always saw the outline of the baseball field during a Raiders game. Well, that's sort of the vision. The sight lines and everything were geared toward baseball, not so much football. The Eagles kind of just fit in where they can. So that's kind of what happened to the A's from the 1950s to the 70s, or into the early 70s. What happened to the Phillies? Well, the Phillies, due to the rise in popularity of the A's, lack of performance on the field, and really, the American League was right. I don't think Philly would be viable for 2 Major League Baseball teams. There's just not enough people. I looked it up. Obviously, New York, LA, They have a lot of teams, and they're bigger. Chicago is even like double the size almost of Philly, so they can kind of sustain it. And the geography in Chicago even sort of lends itself to that. But the Phillies were kind of the odd man out then. They relocate to Montreal and become the Royals. Not the Royals, the Royals, because of the French connection. Major League Baseball wanted to get into Canada. Montreal was the ideal landing spot for the Phillies, but they became the Montreal Royals, and they moved in 1960. More on them here in a minute. So throughout the 70s, though, the Athletics were a solid competitive team, that gritty, hardworking blue collar, but they couldn't overtake the hated Yankees. Like the A's-Yankees rivalry in the AL East, and even back to the early days of the AL before they switched to divisions. The rivalry was good, but the A's just could not overtake them in the 70s. They did win the AL East in 1974, but that was pretty much kind of the extent of the A's success in the 70s due to just how good the Yankees were. Meanwhile, up in Montreal, the Royals were still a solid team, very much beloved by the fans up there. They still end up with Mike Schmidt, so he's sort of the cornerstone, and which I thought was ironic because of how much success he had against the Expos in his career, becomes sort of the main guy in Montreal. So into the 80s, 1983, it was a full circle moment. The Athletics win the American League pennant, and the Royals win the National League pennant. But it was the Royals, led by Mike Schmidt, beating the Athletics in 6 games in the A's triumphant return to the World Series. But throughout the rest of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, the Athletics were just amazing. They kind of got it back together, rose back to prominence. They were American League champions in 86, 97, 2001, 02, 2010, and the COVID-shortened 2020 season, winning the World Series in 2000, 2008, and 2019. So all told, in this scenario, this alternate reality, the Athletics made 20 playoff appearances, won 9 American League championships, and 5 World Series titles. Meanwhile, the Phillies, who moved to Montreal to become the Royals, won 5 National League pennants and 1 World Series title in 1983. Near the end of this simulation, the Royals were starting to get better, similar to what the Phillies are now, becoming competitive, a young team kind of reinvesting in their farm system. So what does it mean for sort of the rest of the Philadelphia sports scene? Well, in 1992, that's when Camden Yards, around the time Camden Yards opened up, the Athletics were sort of right there with the Orioles in wanting to go back to those old school, kind of more open, nostalgic feel stadiums. So they, at the same time that the Orioles were building Camden Yards, the Athletics built Max Stadium down in the Navy Yard. Very similar vibe and feel to the Camden Yards. Kind of looked out over the river and everything. It was cool to see the Navy ships in the background. The Eagles still stay at the Vet and stay there until Lincoln Financial Fields open up. But it does kind of change the narrative of Philly sports. And it's amazing how little things like this change things, because the Athletics left, had some success in Oakland in the 70s and even in the late 80s. But by them staying in Philly, it changes the whole kind of narrative of Philly being an underachieving sports team, never getting over the top. And also, baseball is huge in Philadelphia if the Athletics stayed and had that success. Kind of like the A's are the 1 and the Eagles are like the 1A. Due to just their consistent success. They're always near the top of the American League and things like that. So there you have it. Fridays with AI. Alternate reality. What would have happened if the Athletics stayed? There are still some people out there today that feel as though the wrong team left Philly. I, for one, am not one of them. I think we need to celebrate and appreciate what the A's did in Philadelphia. But I'm glad that we're Phillies fans. But what do you think about this alternate reality? Do you think it's viable? Do you think the A's would have success? if they had stayed. And what do you think about the Phillies moving to Montreal and becoming the Royals? But there you go. Thank you for spending Fridays with AI with me. The alternate reality if the A's stayed in Philadelphia and not the Phillies.